Welcome back to Dental XP. Really kind of exciting because we've got the developer of the new NobelActive right with me alongside here, and that's Dr. Ofir Fromovich, who's really been talking to me for a while, but he's now actually going to use some slides so that we can actually share with you why this is a completely different thought process, the biology behind the process, and why the biology actually supports aesthetics, which is really the preeminent issue today in implant dentistry. So, Fred, take me through this again, because you've been talking, but I haven't seen all the work.
Okay, let's go. So I'm going to show you now what I call is a three-generation implant, because really this implant is based on the biological concept, and I can say that it's very different for other implants. Let's go to the slide and see one by one. So we're talking about now NobelActive implant. So if you look here very good, you can see that the implant looks very strange, you know. And the question is, why we need a new implant? We have a very good implant that have a very good result, and we don't need a new implant. But I think our obligation is to open our mind and to see maybe a new concept can lead us and give us another solution. So what we have here, we can see that we have an implant that are very weird, like a very big thread, like 2 to 3 times bigger than another thread design of an implant, that are variable thread design on a conical part of it. Between it we have a conus, as you can see, and this conus is condensing, so this implant have a thread that going one of each other, double thread, that continue together and becoming to be wider and wider and condensing the bone. I can say that it's maybe like a propeller, you know, one propeller and another propeller that come on top of it, or another propeller. And the upper part of this, if you look it very good, you see that the upper part of this implant is a conical part. So it's going reverse head, and it's working like a corkscrew going inside. So we can have a lot of bone around and a lot of tissue, gingiva around it, and we can stop resorption and have a very nice aesthetic on top of it. And then we have, for this NobelActive, we have 2 design of implant. We have the 2-piece implant with a special connection that is a more tapered of 12 degree and an hexagon. And then we have the 1-piece implant that is a 2 different theory beside this, because it's a 1-piece that have the variety of 2-piece, because you can put any abutment that coming by friction on top of it with the index. So let's try now to understand what we have here. So if I see here, what is the difference between normal tooth and normal implant? Normal tooth have the PDL, have the blood supply, and if we're going to have like 0.5 millimeter of bone, is no problem, it will not resorb. And of course we have a full emergent profile for the crown. If you're looking at an implant, it's not exactly the same, because implant have to have at least 2 millimeter all around it. And this is correct, 2 millimeter? I say yes, 2 millimeter for 375 millimeter implant, but if I go for 4 and 5 or 6 millimeter implant, I like to have more bone. So a critical size of bone around the implant is very, very important. And we have to take this in mind. And of course, the connection of the gingiva is by hemidesmosome, and we don't have the ligament that we have around tooth. So we're talking about 2 different things. And many of the designers of the implant before was thinking that it has to behave like a normal tooth, and this was the concept behind it. If you look here on the bone, we see the adversarial system and the spongios. So adversarial system and Volkmann canal on the cortical. We know that the cortical healing rate is 0.6 micron a day, very, very little. And 30% of blood supply coming from the perios going inside to the cortical, and all the venous retract is going from the cortical to the gingiva. And spongios bone, the healing rate is 20 to 50 micron a day. And of course, the role of spongios is for nutrition, because we don't have lamina dura like we have in normal teeth. So it's totally different. When we look at normal tooth, we see that the space between the tooth, the sept is very small. But this is no problem in normal tooth, because we have the PDL, the blood supply. When we're going to implant, we like to have 3 or 4 millimeter between the implant. We like to have a lot of bone around it. When we think about pontic, you know, many doctors putting one implant here, and in the space between the implant, they're just pressing with ovoid ponting and have artificial papilla that's looking very nice and keeping for a long time. But if I take this bridge out, and on the same place where it was the ovoid pontic, I will going to drill and put an implant, I'm going to have resorption because I don't have enough the critical size that I have to be here. You know, I was doing a very simple experience in my garden. I take branch of tree, of 8 millimeter branch, and I was drilling a drill to them. 2 millimeter, 4 millimeter, 6 and 7 millimeter. The branch that have 8 millimeter with the 7 millimeter drill was die very quickly. The branch that have the 2 millimeter drill was keeping for a long time. So a critical size is very important. So this implant design is designed that is, I can make a smaller ostomy, the thread can condense, a conus between can condense, and the upper part is reverse conical head. So biological consideration is very important because I'm going to have a lot of bone on our upper part, a bone platform switching, I call it, and a platform switching that's coming on the upper part of this one. So let's see now how this is look like. If I'm going to look at finite element analysis and photoelastic of many implants, I see that the stress of the implant will be on the upper cortical. If I look at our design, and I can see that it's coming all around the implant, and you can see this is work done by Matteo Danza and Paracchini. So the implant is designed that it take all the stress from the upper cortical and put it around the implant himself. So if we're talking what is the connection, the abutment that connects to the implant. So normally we know that everybody would like to have, even in the history, even now many implant company would like to have a platform switching, what we see on the right side. And many people talking about a platform switching that we can see on this here. So platform switching, we design in one of our old design that I was doing, it was 15 years ago we designed it. And of course it worked very good. But today with NobelActive, we're talking about bone platform switching with platform switching. It means a lot of bone around the neck of the implant and a narrow abutment. And of course the thread that can condense in a soft bone and make small fracture to the bone, and by making small fracture initiate the osseointegration process, condensing the bone and make it like lamina dura for the beginning, and avoid stress from the upper part and having more cortical around it. So let's go inside and see a little bit. You can see this picture that the implant is on the side. And what happened here? When the implant is very close to the tooth, we cannot have the papilla here. When the implant is here, we can create the ovoid pontic effect and have this papilla. And this is some of the principle that this implant have. So we have here the one-piece and the two-piece implant. And I'm going to go and a little bit show. This is the group that was involving in the research and the development of the implant. It's me, it's Professor Nitzan Bichacho, Yuval Yacovi, and Benny Carmon. So let's now go inside and see. I look here and see the apical thread of the implant. They are very big and exactly like a big propeller that going inside the bone and condensing. You know, even if I have 1 millimeter of bone, I can stabilize this implant. So this implant have a very big thread on the beginning, bigger, maybe 2-3 times than any other implant, that are variable changing around the implant. And then you can see the thread design that going here, and on the right side you can see that this is a double thread design, a variable thread design that I can call that is like a double propeller that each one come on top of the other one. And then if you look here, you can see this animation, how it is going to work, because as you can see here, we have here the thread design then going on top of it and one going after the other. And then we can see here that between the thread we have conus. And this conus that we have between the thread working like a osteotomy. So we have the threaded going, and in the same time we have a osteotomy that we have conical, that one is going after the other and expanding the bone, and you can see it here on the right side as well. Now if you look at the upper part, as I told you, is a reverse conical head. So it's work like corkscrew, like we have a hole and the thread is going outside to the hole to the bone, and the bone is still sitting in the same position. So I can have a lot of volume of bone but still place a bigger implant below. And we can see it now here with all the advantage that we can have on it. So now look at this. And then as you can see this animation, now you understand now what happened with the implant and how the implant is condensing himself in this. Where we can use it, let's see here for example, maxilla. If I have soft bone, the implant have the thread to the apex of the implant. You know, many implant company have a dome, have a round one. So if I have a 5 millimeter implant and I have a dome, it means I don't have support for this part, because if it's 5 millimeter, it's been 2.5 millimeter of dome, and I cannot support. But this implant have a thread to the top. So if I go for type 4 bone, as you see here, I drill to the upper part of the cortical, and then the implant is condensing the bone. I can have a very good stability, big cortical here, good support in the upper part, even when it's conus one, and condensing all the bone here. So in type 4 bone, I can drill 2 millimeter and place 4 or 5 millimeter implant. So in soft bone, this implant have a lot of advantage. For example, I can drill with a small drill, like 2 millimeter in type 4 bone, and have the implant be stabilized in maybe 50 newton to centimeter, and I can go even for immediate loading. So the implant have a thread on the upper part of the thread, and this can have a big cortical stabilization, because many implant company have a dome, you know, and the dome cannot be support on the cortical, because if the implant is 5 millimeter and the dome is like 2.5 millimeter, you lose. But here, no, the thread is going to the apex, and then I can have a very good engagement. So I can make a small osteotomy, let the implant go, is condensing the bone, and have a big cortical stabilization that is very, very good. Or, for example, if I have a molar defect, so I can drill 2 millimeter, no more, 1 millimeter, and I can take the implant, have a very good stability, even in a 1 or 2 millimeter, and I can go and make bone augmentation material with the implant in the same day. And there is very big advantage, because I save a lot of chair time for my patient. You can see it here. His extraction case, I put the bone augmentation material, it's 2 millimeter of bone, and the implant is very stable, and I can escape 2 or 3 operations. Or here, I have a very big defect. The implant will not slip to the defect. The implant will go where I will let the implant go. It means that the big thread, I can lead the implant to the way I want to lead the implant, and this is a very, very big advantage, because some implant that you put are coming close together and going far away, because it depends where the bone is soft. But here, no. You can really guide the implant and change the position. Or for example, here, I have the mandibular nerve. I can drill 8 millimeter, take a 10 millimeter implant, and you can see here that the implant can drive himself, because he has the capacity of self-drilling, self-tapping, and changing direction. Here, on this animation, you will see how all this feature is working. And then, you can see here, the upper part of the implant, it's a very nice feature, because it's working like a corkscrew. So I have here the bone, and the bone, let's say, is 8 millimeter. I make 2.8 millimeter of drills, take a 4.3 millimeter implant, and you can see that the upper part of the implant here is bigger than the coronal part. And then you can see that this implant disappears and have a lot of bone contact, and sometimes even expand the bone. So it's like miracle. The implant is go like a corkscrew and disappear and give me a lot of bone. Or you can see it here. It's the same exactly. A very narrow bone that I can drill 2.8 millimeter. I don't need to drill more than this. And then you can see that I take the one-piece implant, and you can see the bone here is like disappearing here. But it's not disappearing, because this is just the shadow of the thread that's going on top of it. And you can see here that we're going and take this back. So here we don't have it, and here it's come back. And if I go to the second slide, you can see that all the bone is coming back. So we condensing the spongeous bone, we have a contact on the upper cortical with a reverse conical head. And this is the best idea, because we can work like ovoid ponting in each type of it, and by making a small osteotomy. So you can see this is the concept. Condensing the bone in a soft bone, and if I have type 1 bone, so I make a normal drill, not so small, and what will be happen is only the thread, the edge of the thread, will engage the cortical bone and leave me a lot of space for new regeneration and new blood vessel. So this implant can be good for type 3 bone, type 1 bone, and the only change will be the change on the drill size that I'm going to do. And the upper part, as you can see here, I have a bone platform switching, what I call. I have a lot of bone and a platform switching on the abutment. So if this implant was a normal implant, it was going here, and I don't have a space here. So the difference between the implant and normal tools, the normal tools have the PDL of the blood supply, and the little bone is enough for her, but not for implant. For implant, we need a small osteotomy, and to have as much as small bone as much as was gingiva.